do your research. We're just very confident that we're the best in this part of the business for Western brands.
And I want a good show, damn it. Ready for a good show?
Doing awesome, yeah. I'm excited to talk to you, Angie. Thank you for having me.
Yes.
I've always been doing big into archery, and my dad said, "Hey, you guys want to start an archery store?"
Yes, that's how I was.
And yes, of course, let's do this together.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the E-Comm Show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the E-Comm Show. I'm your host, as usual, and I'm sorry for that. My name is Andrew Maff, and I am so excited for today's show. I am joined by Izzy Rosenzweig, who is the CEO of Portless. I was so confident I was going to get your last name right.
It was perfect. I told you. You got it right.
Yes, got it. Obviously, Izzy, thank you so much. I'm going to butcher your first name now. Izzy, thank you so much for being on the show. Super excited to have you on the show. I love, this is an area we don't get to talk a lot about because it can be so complicated. So I'm so excited to have you on the show so that you can obviously help kind of weed our way through some of those challenges. But obviously, let's do the usual thing, pretend no one knows who you are. And if you can tell me a little bit more about Portless, and we will take it from there.
Absolutely. First of all, Andrew, thank you for having me. Very excited to be on your show. High level on myself and the company. My name is Izzy Rosenzweig. I have a company called Portless. In short, what Portless does, we refer to as direct logistics. So if you think about a typical e-commerce business, direct consumer business, the typical supply chain is, let's say I'm selling this polo shirt. I'm going to manufacture 10,000 polo shirts. I'm going to put it on a boat, and it's going to take probably around 45, 60, 70 days on water. And only once it gets to the States am I bringing it over, paying import duties, moving it from the port to my U.S. facility. And only once it's unpacked in my U.S. facility could I start selling to my customers. You're looking at 2 to 3 months in a pretty standard supply chain expectation. That's a long time to wait to sell inventory. And then once you get the order, then you're shipping it, which takes 4 to 7 days on average across continental U.S. That has been E-Comm since the beginning. We take a very different approach. So we say, hey, once you're done production, don't put it on a boat, send it to us. We're based in Shenzhen. If you're in the Guangzhou area, we'll get your product within 2 to 3 hours. If you're anywhere north or west of China, we get it 2 to 3 days. But basically, instead of 2 to 3 months, 2 to 3 days, your product is in our facility. We're connected to Shopify, any software you're selling on. Inventory gets fed to you that you now have inventory. You could sell it to your customer. We will deliver it to your customer on average in 5.2 days in the US. USPS driver, USPS tracking number, USPS label. 100% local experience. So from your end, the consumer's end, 100% make a transaction. 5.5 days later, USPS driver dropping off a package. It got scanned in LA, then delivered to your house in San Diego. Local US experience. But for the brand, lead time just went from months to days. So your cash cycle is much faster. Inventory needs go down. Did I need 10,000 shirts? Well, I need 10,000 shirts when I had to wait 3 months. Now maybe you have 2,000 shirts and you could reorder as you're selling. And then the idea of overproduction goes away because you are much more agile. And underproduction. When you sell out November 10th of this year, well, typical supply chain, you missed the season. We say, no, go back to production. November 20th, it's ready. You have Black Friday. Capture demand. So that's A, agility in demand, agility in inventory. B, warehousing with us is cheaper. Pick and pack rates are cheaper. No container costs. We don't use containers. No import duties. Section 321. Import duty free. As long as your average order value is $800 or less, under $800, it's import duty free. So no tariffs, no duties. And shipping rates start at $5. Again, our focus is light items like apparel, cosmetics, jewelry, small electronics, small products. So for those lighter items, great shipping rates. And third thing, we do this to 50 countries around the world. UK, Royal Mail. Australia Post. So not only do you have less inventory and like way better cash flow, you now can sell around the world, cheaper marketing there, and the consumer always has a local experience. That is what we do for Portless. We take a whole different look of logistics and supply chain.
You're either the world's best salesman or there's a hole that I'm missing. I don't get it. How is that? So, okay, so you're basically fulfilling directly from China overseas. I don't need to put it on a boat, wait 2 or 3 months for it to show up and get to my 3PL or my warehouse, whatever. And so, there's just a huge hole there that I'm missing of like, I don't understand. Why is that not a thing already? I know, and keep in mind, and as I'm sure all of our listeners know, my knowledge in operations, inventory, all of that is like impressively low. So like it's amazing how long I've been in this industry and how little I know about that side of things. So explain to me how that's not already a thing. Why are we not just delivering straight to the consumer at least a portion of the inventory directly from overseas?
I'll explain why. So first of all, this business has been around. This model has been around for over 10 years. I've been around in this business model for almost as long as it's been around. Now, it does exist. How does Shein run their supply chain? How does Temu run their supply chain? Right? They're using this supply chain. Now, they're not very good at giving the local experience. They're going to have China tracking number very often from them.
Yeah.
We know how to separate the last mile from the first mile and give that consumer a U.S. experience. But it's been around for a long time. Now, the reason why only now are we helping other brands do this at a much more aggressive scale, because only in the last 2.5 years did it become a 100% local U.S. experience. It used to have managed around the tracking number, managed around the label, right? So it would be very confusing for consumers. It wouldn't be very relevant for American brands. But now it's 100% local U.S. experience. And speed time is now 5.5 days, right? Where it used to be 2 weeks for delivery, because it went down a different model. It used to go down like the e-packet China Post model. We don't do that model. So the last 2.5, 3 years, the direct injection model, which means we get orders, we put it on pallet, we sort it based on where the customer's in the US, put it on pallets, and then we put in air cargo planes. So if you think about it, how long is a flight? Well, a flight from China to US, 14 to 15 hours on average. That means overnight could be in the US. So the idea of getting something here very fast makes sense. And we hand it to USPS near the customer. We do injection in California, Chicago, New York, Arizona, Texas, Miami, Atlanta. So no matter where you are, we're handing it to USPS near where the customer is. So zone 1, zone 2. So really, this business model has been around for a long time. It wasn't very good for the last 10 years. The last 2.5, 3 years, it got to extremely good. And now, again, not for everybody, because this is models built for lighter products like apparel's big, cosmetics, jewelry, small electronics, small accessories. For very heavy stuff, you're not going to send a microwave or you're not going to send a fridge down this model, because the pallet needs to hold many different orders in order for the unit economics to make sense.
Yeah.
But as long as your stuff are light, there's no stop off at a 3PL. It's on a plane that night, handed to USPS, delivered to your customer's front door, fully local experience. So this model only got really relevant the last 2.5, 3 years. Shein and Temu, Quince, Cider, they've been using it for a very long time. We help American brands, European brands for Europe leverage it as well. We're just the supply chain part of this business.
But what about like from a cost structure? Because obviously I understand, like to your point, going by air, yes, it's faster. You can order stuff by air, but it's extremely more expensive than taking it by boat. So if a D2C brand is basically leveraging this model, so they're leveraging Portless, obviously, is their cost for shipping to the customer like significantly higher, or is it, how does that work?
So the big caveat is depends on the brand, meaning what's the size of your product. Let's say your product is a pound, right? Very good chance your shipping rates and our shipping rates will be very similar. Why is that? First of all, if your stuff is small, think the biggest cost structure of a pallet on a plane is the volumetric or actual weight on the plane. Mm-hmm. Let's just give the extreme example because it will make it simpler. A pair of earrings. How much space does that take on a pallet? How many pairs of earrings can I put on a pallet? Probably like 1,000 earrings. Think about, apparel, probably 4,000 orders. That means the cost per order is quite low. Now, if I was doing pallet to go to my fulfillment center, to then take it apart and then reship the full continental US, yes, it's expensive. But if the pallet is halfway to your customer's front door, because we're sorting it, and we're not stopping off anywhere, we're going right to your customer's front door, that flight is half the delivery to your customer's front door. So as long as your products are on the lighter end, shipping rates start at $5, under $5, $4.80. We could do for door to door from our floor to your customer's front door. Now, you think it's bulkier and heavier? Yes, it does get more expensive. Then you could say, 1 second, even if it's bulkier and heavier, how much am I saving on import duties, right? Some products are 43% import duties. That goes away. That could be $5 per order. So sometimes, very often, apples to apples will be very competitive. The heavier and bulkier stuff is, the more expensive it is, and all of a sudden it's not apples. Then, okay, what are you paying on warehousing? What are you paying on pick and pack? What are you paying on import duties? And all that matters to your true landed cost of goods.
Yeah. Huh. Okay. So what would stop? And honestly, like, you came in with such a great sales pitch that I was like, okay, I got to find a way that there's got to be a reason this doesn't work, because I don't know anyone doing this. What's keeping sellers from getting a 3PL like in China?
Great question. Okay. So first off, we say is who's going to do it right now? There are brands doing it themselves. There's people like us, and there's, let's call it, local Chinese 3PLs. They do not understand the U.S. market. They don't understand the way to keep it localized, the localized experience, not having China, et cetera. So there just isn't that many options. We say, hey, if you want to do it yourself, go ahead. It took us 2 years to set up legals. You need Hong Kong Corporation, you need Chinese Corporation, roofies, local directors, KYCs. We've been doing this for 10 years, this model. So we know this model inside out. At the end of the day, like a AWS, who wants to build a data center? You're actually more cost effective going to AWS yourself because you're sharing costs across the board. So we say, like, hey, if you want to go ahead, we're just doing this for a long time. We're really well priced. We'll probably save you more money than you are today. You just have upside. So we say no downside, free world out there. Do your research. We're just very confident that we're the best in this part of the business for Western brands.
Huh. Cool. So I obviously one of the questions I'm thinking is like, okay, is this kind of like the beginning of what we would assume is like the future of D2C fulfillment? Like, I know, we work with 200 and something different brands at this point, and I can't think of anyone off the top of my head that is doing this type of model. So and I know, to your point, obviously it's a lower price point, maybe smaller products or something like that. Obviously, I guess lower price point doesn't matter, but smaller products helps out. So like, what do you think where is overall fulfillment going? And one of the other questions I got to ask too, what did we learn from this model during like the COVID times? Because I know that threw a lot of stuff in, and that was mostly a port issue. So if you're bringing it in by flight, that's not really a problem.
Zero delays, not a single delay. When ports were backed up for 5 to 8 weeks, we had 0 delays. Planes were leaving every single day. There was a bit of a bump in cost of pricing, but not much, like 5%. No delays on COVID. But to answer the original question, DDC has gotten smashed in the public markets. Look at any DC brand public markets. They look terrible. But why are they terrible? Demand is there, right? There's $176 billion of DDC transaction in the United States alone. The problem is to service that demand. If there's demand, there's always going to be someone servicing it. The question is a good business model. So in the current model, terrible cash flow. Every time you sell something, you got to wait 2-3 months to sell it again. Lead times are killing you. Your gross margins are tight. You out of stock. You overstock production hits your bottom line. So it's hard, right? Like, you're having great production overseas, but you're trying to like be agile and you can't. I believe this is the early days of again, not every brand could do this, but brands that fit in this model, lighter products, this changes it. You have the demand. They're going to have the same experience that they had yesterday. And you're going to have an incredible cash flow business. Fast iteration. Think about like software business as fast iteration. In e-com, it's like 6 months. We're like, no, go to production. You go put on your e-commerce site. You get 2,000 pieces. You're selling really well. Go back into production. You're getting feedback. You want a bigger pocket. Your next production run is a bigger pocket. The future is, I believe, a different. You can't play the same game as Walmart and Amazon and be successful. You must play a different game. And the future of this logistics give you great cash flow. And I also believe the future of manufacturing is small batch manufacturing. Now, small batch manufacturing isn't for every industry. The more custom it is, you can't do it. But apparel, it's machines. As long as you have the raw materials locked up, you could move into small batch manufacturing, which means you can have agile inventory. You can have agile, fast feedback loops. I believe that changes the game. You have demand, you have brands servicing it with better gross margin, better cash flow, and I think in let's call it the next 5 years, you're going to see really profitable DTC brands. Money's no longer free. We need to be profitable. You have great cash flow businesses, but at the core now, this model, they're great businesses.
Yeah. Interesting. Because I mean, look, obviously I know like that's the big area that was actually kind of leading into my next question of like when I'm basically just going to ask you for your straight sales pitch because I'm imagining this is the answer. Because right, it always comes down to ROI at the end. And so the thing that the customer experience makes a ton of sense. Great. I still have the US based side, but from a from a profitability perspective, I'm not really going to see a difference there. The customer experience is going to be improved. However, the main point being like, okay, we went through pick and pack. We went through what are your 3PL costs, like that kind of stuff. Like, okay, now I'm understanding a little bit more. But how are you how does a brand justify the actual added benefit of now I don't have to wait for cash for 2 to 3 months? Like, how do you even factor that in to your costs? Because I kind of see that as like, okay, at the same time, I could take a loan at X% and deal with that. And then I got to do that every few months or whatever. But like, how do you factor that in when you're trying to justify if it's doable for a brand or not?
Honestly, the brands that we service get immediate cash flow and immediate margin increases. You don't need to get, that's pretty sophisticated. If you're looking at your loan cost and you take that cost and you divide it by the amount of units you have, you could get a cost per unit loan money. We wouldn't go that sophisticated. You're saving money way before that. So your cash flow is game changing. Most DC brands go out of business because of cash flow more than gross margin.
Yeah.
So let's just say that is very obvious from months to days. Then all of a sudden your warehousing, pick and pack rates, we charge $1. Most of them charge, $1.50, $2.50. Our warehousing is a fraction of the cost. Our shipping rates are cheap. Import duties. Think about if you're an apparel brand and you're spending 43% on import duties, let's say anywhere from 20 to 43%. That means per unit you're spending $2 to $5. That goes away. Section 321. It's been around for people using Mexico for a long time, right?
Yeah.
You say same thing as Mexico, but you also have advantages as lead times. So you don't need to look hard to save money. You should be saving money day one, very obvious places, and improving cash flow. Now we have a bucket of customers that there are stuff on the heavier side. So okay, they might not be saving money. They may be breaking even, or maybe they're even paying 50 cents more, but cash flow. There's money in the bank all the time. So like the lighter your product is, you'll see potentially net less cost in your model.
Yeah.
In your cost structure.
I mean, I can definitely see how it completely varies on like a per brand basis, or even on a per product basis. Do you have brands that like, hey, we're going to do this, but only for certain products?
Usually we start off that way. So brands very often that start us off like, hey, let's try these 3 SKUs and see how it goes. Almost always, I can't think, like some people's wholesale business they don't do with us, and we'll put on a boat for them. We'll do FBA injection for them. But once people try us and we say crawl, walk, run, like we are your supply, like you go do manufacturing, but like we understand we're one of your most important partners here. So we're like, hey, try 3 products. It goes well. Do you like it? Send another 10 products. Send another 30 products. So very often we do that. It's about testing our model, but almost always, I can't even think offhand of anyone that doesn't end up like we have customers in the middle of the process, but most customers end up going 100% of their business with us. You have enterprise. Okay, enterprise. Then we have partial, because enterprise, they might have physical retail stores. And physical retail stores, you need local inventory to restock stores. So in that case, we end up getting their best-selling products. We end up getting collections, drops. If you think about like someone drops, if you think about, those drops that people do, like we work with some really big influencers. They'll do a drop. The way they used to do it is to do, drop 10,000 units, then put on a boat. And the customer has to wait 60 days post-production for them to get it. That is like the longest delivery time ever. Yeah. So these guys, it could be either enterprise businesses for like certain drops of their seasonal lines, or influencers, 2 days post-production, you're shipping to your customer. 8 days, 6 days later, if they're in, parts of Asia or wherever they are, maybe longer, but pretty quickly after they have a delivery. So those are areas that we see where we get some of the product, not all the product.
How do you decipher who's a good fit and who's not? It sounds like the pretty obvious, like, hey, if you've got a smaller product, chances are this is going to line up for you. But at what point do you go, okay, now once your product gets over X size, if your price point isn't over X, it may not be justifiable for you.
Yeah, exactly. I would say over £5. Very often, like, okay, your order's over £5. You're probably not going to be successful here. Let's do the math. What's your import duties like? What's your cash flow needs?
Yeah.
What are you currently paying locally? Sometimes these products are like funky looking products and they're paying a lot locally. But I would say if I have to, like, rule of thumb, above £5, we'll get complex. Under £5, again, apparel, cosmetics, jewelry, small electronics, accessories. Usually pretty interesting conversation. Like, we'll have a pretty interesting conversation.
Yeah. But if it's over £5 and it's a higher, let's say AOV, or just the individual product is a higher price point, it then could theoretically still be justifiable, right?
Exactly, because then you could be saving $40 in import duties, right?
Yeah.
Goods is high. And we have scenarios like that. Or they want to try international markets. Let's just say their stuff is heavy, but they want to test Europe. They've never tested Europe. Well, we can help you test Europe really easily from one hub next to your factory. So there's always like those cases, but like core ICP, because we mainly focus on people's main markets, like US for US brands, Europe for European brands. If you're under £5, we'll have a really interesting conversation.
Yeah. Izzy, this was awesome. Your excitement for this it made me excited about operations, which is very hard to do. So obviously, I really appreciate you having you on the show. I'd love to give you an opportunity, let everyone know where they can find out more about you and, of course, more about Portless.
Thank you so much. Again, thank you so much for having me. This has been super fun. I do get very excited by supply chain. I consider myself a supply chain nerd. So if I got you excited, I get very excited about that. You can find us on portless.com. We have all the information, case studies, videos. Contact us there. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn and X, always posting content, posting videos. Anything you want to learn, just send me a DM there. We'd love the opportunity to connect with anyone that thinks that they could benefit from this model.
Love it. Thank you so much for being on the show. Obviously, everyone who tuned in, thank you as well. Please make sure you do the usual, rate, review, subscribe, all that fun stuff on whichever podcast platform you prefer, or head over to the ecomshow.com to check out all of our previous episodes. But as usual, we will see you all next time. Have a good one.
Thank you for tuning in to the E-Comm Show. Head over to ecomshow.com to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform or on the BlueTuskr YouTube channel. The E-Comm Show is brought to you by BlueTuskr, a full-service digital marketing company specifically for e-commerce sellers looking to accelerate their growth. Go to BlueTuskr.com now for more information. Make sure to tune in next week for another amazing episode of the E-Comm Show.